Hello and welcome to Extraordinary Women TV with Shannon Skinner. I'm your host. Well, this morning you're going to meet one funny lady. Deborah Kimmett is here today in the studio, and I'm so grateful to have her here. Later in the segment, before we take a break, I'll have my regular Good to Know Minute when I ask my guests for their top success tip. You'll hear Deborah's. In the second half of the show, we're going to be talking about art anywhere, so stay tuned. Well, Deborah Kimmett, my first guest, is a 20-year veteran of Second City, a Governor General nominated writer, an accomplished performer on TV and radio, and of course today a dynamic motivational speaker. And she is one funny lady.
Yes, woof.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I know. The title is longer than the interview. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Well, it's really great having you here.
Yeah.
And now you started your career with Second City, which is a dream for many people, of course.
Yeah.
What inspired you to have this idea to connect with Second City and to really, I mean, you've launched yourself with a successful career as a humorist, and you've been doing it for a number of years, but I mean, what sparked that idea that you wanted to get out there and be funny?
Well, I always wanted to be an actress, and I think every humorist thinks that they should be serious. You know, it's really weird. And I was working, coming to Toronto, studying, and I was working at this aluminum company, wanting to just get into acting, and I kept serving these guys lunch. And every time I did, I made all these jokes, and so one night they took me down to the Second City, and I thought, this is what I really like doing, because Second City isn't just funny the way stand-up is. It's a very team-building kind of thing,
right.
And you're really influenced by the audience and what the input from the audience is, input from your other team players, and then you've also got this other bigger input, which is all your own ideas. So you're just constantly having to develop this flexibility and saying yes, which of course is the rule for improv, is that after you say yes, life becomes interesting. So that idea that you have to keep saying yes, and boy, it was a great training ground for that and all my writing.
And so that was just after John Candy.
Yes, I was I was next. I was almost successful. I was
the
working
great
my
John
way
Candy.
down the ladder of excess. Yes, that was the 80s. Yeah, so it was great, and it was wonderful because it was a very dynamic place at that time, and there were a lot of people coming in to try to hire you, and so it was very competitive and nerve-wracking. And I think the one thing that sometimes would trip people up is we'd all come in very talented and very energetic and lots of ideas, and then we'd start to get sidetracked by all that other stuff. So you really had to have this discipline to keep what you needed to do on stage, because it was every night, 6 nights a week, 8 shows a week, and you had to be on. So it was very good training for a 22-year-old.
Now, how did you find that discip?
Oh, I drank.
I mean,
I really just drank through it. It was anyway. And then there were a couple of drummers, but basically I think like everything you learn after the fact. I left Second City for a couple of years and went out and did sort of touring comedy. And I was in Elmira where the marquee read Wiener Schnitzel, Strawberry Shortcake, and Comedy with a K. And so once you've played for the Mennonites, you really do learn your craft. I think what I needed is you needed to just keep doing it night after night. And then about 2 years later, I came back to Second City. And it was one of those things that it wasn't until I started teaching and directing that I started to realize what tripped me up when I was younger. So you learn, and you learn through your mistakes. And I made a lot of them, and now, I'm still working there.
Now, of course, then you had a hand in creating the corporate, being part of sort of architecting the, is that a word, architecting? Being an architect?
I like it, I think it is. You're from the Cambridge Society, I think you know that it's a word. Yeah, none of us will know that. It was interesting because I had just written a play, and I just got the check for the play, and this play was a big deal in Canada, a play for theater, and the check was for $9.74. And I just made this big statement to my husband, I want to be an artist. But then I got the check. And Second City at that same time, they see me teaching, and they asked if I wanted to go into the corporate world and teach businesses how to be flexible, how to improvise, how to say yes. And I was like, no, which is great improviser. No, I'm not doing that. So my first client was the Bank of Montreal, and I went in there, and he didn't like me, and I didn't like him. And, you know, I mean, just I think fate intervenes on these things. But I really, it's been about 15 years of doing my creative stuff in theater and TV. And then I also have this sort of other life doing businesses. And it's so interesting because you just learn so much about the human condition when you're the person kind of parachuted in and look at the business model and look at the theater model of improvisation still can apply to business. And I found that very dynamic and exciting to see that when you said yes on stage, you got better ideas. And then if you said yes in business and embraced change, you were going to come up with a better solution than when you were always in just the 5-year plan.
So then from Second City, then you've really launched a speaking career. I mean, how did that training impact you then?
I mean, Second City was like boot camp. There was a lot to survive because of the competition, but after that, it just, I realized I had a grounding in staying flexible. And I think one of the things that's key about Second City is that Phantom of the Opera, the play stays the same all the time, you know, Mamma Mia, where at Second City, the theater, that the experience every night changed. And when I took that into the business world, I see a lot of people in business right now having to change the model and the paradigm from which they're working. And it's a really big struggle for people, you know, because they're holding on to these old ideas and they're not working, and yet they don't know what the new ideas are going to look like.
And there's a lot of stress
enormously.
in these environments.
Yeah. And I sound really serious about it, but when I go there, what I really see is people just need to lighten up and have a lot of fun and, you know, see that there's an outside world, because you get very myopic when you work 8 or 9 hours a day in an institution where the stress never lets up.
So can you maybe give an example of how you've helped a company, you don't even have to name names, but how you helped a company sort of turn around or help them?
I mean, I don't go in and perform brain surgery, like, you know, like I go in for an hour or two, but what you see is this, you know, very serious thinking that they're the only ones going through these big changes. And because I go to all these companies, I see that whether you're in the government or you're in big business or you're in little business, that you're being constantly asked to, you know, take off the stress. So what I do is I just paint a picture of what I think they're going through on a daily basis. And the other thing is, you know, companies love this sort of business speak all the time, like, you know, think outside the box and all this stuff. And people are like, I'm tired, I just don't want to think outside the box. I just want to come to work, keep my head down, and go home, you know. So they laugh at that because I usually get inside their heads and just make jokes about what they're going through on a daily basis, getting to work, being at work, and balancing this thing called home life and work life.
Now, of course, you're also a writer, and you've been nominated by with the Governor General Award.
Yeah, I got that speech worked out, and I didn't win, but I wrote a play. It was about my daughter's birth and her premature birth, and it was very bizarre because I cried through most of the writing of it, and then, you know, I'm at the theater and everybody's laughing, but it was a great experience, and it really opened me up because, you know, I didn't know that I could write like that, and it has opened me up to wanting to do my own work and have continued to do my own work. And it's ironic because the speaking is about telling stories and humor, and then I'm going to be on stage and I'm telling stories and humor. It's just different venues, you know.
So really, you're a humorous storyteller then?
Yes, that's right. Yes, that sounds very authentic, yeah.
But I know that you do, you know, a lot of other writing, and of course you have a new book coming up.
Yeah.
Very soon.
Yeah.
What's your book about?
Well, I live near Kingston, and this magazine down there, and they kind of, it looks a lot like Toronto Life. It's called Kingston Life, and it's the same kind of look. And they came to me and asked me to write a column, which I did for 4 years. It's great discipline because I had to come up with something. And it was a real challenge because I was going from where I'm on stage and I can fill it in if it doesn't work. But I had to have everything on the page, which I found really hard. And so then I had put out a little book before, but I'd made a lot of mistakes with it. So this book I'm putting out is that 4 years of those essays. It's called That Which Doesn't Kill You Makes You Funnier. And it's all about these sort of trials and tribulations that you have as you go along in your life, kids and work and hairdressing and getting older and all that. So I've shaped it together. It's going to be launched in October.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about your book and your one-woman show. And in the meantime, it's my Good to Know Minute, and I know, Deborah, you've got a great tip for the viewers.
Well, I do. I think after you say yes to a new idea, you're going to be filled with doubt. And my doubt gets up ahead of me in the morning and just sits at the edge of the bed, with a mini skirt and chocolates and says, you suck. And I think what you have to do is just not listen to that doubt. You have to kind of push past it and say, get out of here. And if you do that on the subway, you'll have no one sitting next to you.
Well, thank you for that, Deborah. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more with Deborah Kimmett, one funny lady. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Extraordinary Women TV. I'm your host, Shannon Skinner, and I'm speaking with one funny lady, Deborah Kimmett, who is a humorist, speaker, author, and one funny lady. And really enjoying this conversation with you. Now, let's just pick up where we left off before the break. And you've got a book coming out, That Which Doesn't Kill You Makes You Funnier, which is a fantastic title, I have to tell you. And that's, of course, the title of your one-woman show.
Yeah. Well, it's one of these things, it's a series of essays, but when I do it as a one-woman show, it's a series of characters that I play. And it's all about this sort of very fast thing that happened to me. I don't know if you've ever done this, where you kind of put your hands up to the universe and go, okay, I think I'm almost perfect, but I like a few changes. And then the next day, the universe comes with a wrecking ball, and you're totally in a different spot. And that's what happened. I was 49, and I thought, I just need a few improvements, and thought I would just be up for a paint job. And the next thing you know, my marriage ended, the kids left, the dog died. It was pathetic. And I was like, I was in a country and western song. And it was this weird parallel where my career was going up, and I was getting, I was on the Debaters, and I was on the Winnipeg Comedy Festival, and my speaking was going great, and I'm more creative. And at home, I'm depressed. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm a depressed motivational speaker. It's kind of pathetic. So, of course, I go right to the pen, and I write everything down. And I've always gotten up every morning and written. And then before I knew it, I had this sort of series of that journey. But it was like going from 49, married with kids, to, where I am today, 54, and living a life as a single woman for the first time in my life, And how pathetic I actually feel sometimes, Online dating, all these horrible things, It'd be easier to be hit by a truck than that. It's called online dating. Yeah, it's plentyoffish.com, because all the fish everyone threw back really was on there. And, I really felt sick about not dating and having somebody. And I remember, my mother used to say, don't go to the store, when you're hungry, because you make a poor shopper. And it's certainly true after a divorce. Don't go online dating. Mention don't go online dating. There's a few people that always say they found someone there, but these people, I think, are lying. It's like the myth, the rat in the hamburger or something.
But, I think that you talk about what a lot of people don't want to talk about. I think you're expressing there's a lot of people who've been divorced or on online dating. And I think they're all feeling the same way, but they don't say it.
Yeah, I know. I finally get paid for complaining. And I call it my neurosis du jour. I get a check from it. But it's funny because I learned this when I was at the Tarragon Theatre. I remember this great guy said, if you make it personal, it'll become universal. So it seems like the more I tell this story at this point in my life, which I've always done, I've always told about my kids, and I've told about, everybody, everybody relates to it. And it's so fun because my favorite thing after I speak or perform is when people say, oh my gosh, it was like you were at my house this morning, or oh my gosh, that's exactly what I go through. And then there's these people that are married, cracks me up, they go, don't worry, you'll find somebody. You're like, oh, dear God, really? I don't want to. Now I'm getting used to it. Because you get weird when you live by yourself now. You just don't want anyone to witness like the crazy. Because, for instance, I used to think it was my husband's fault. Now I live alone. I'm like, oh, my God, it was me. I'm just pathetic. Talking to the cat, wondering if it's thinking it. What are you thinking? And the cat's with the pillow, no. It's like, you're not thinking anything. Yeah. Anyway.
Now, you've been on the Debaters?
Yes, I have. Yeah, you argue for money. It's great.
Well,
You do.
what has this experience been like for you? But that was simply argued. It's great.
Yeah, it's funny because it's one of those, again, we were talking about opportunities before the interview and how you just like, you try for stuff and you're over here trying and nothing happens. And I go to the Winnipeg Comedy Festival and I'm 45 years old. And it's the first time I've been labeled a stand-up comic, and I've never thought of myself as that. And I'm there, and then they say, do you want to do this little show called The Debaters? And the next thing you know, I've done 15 of them, and it was so much fun. Like, it's just, you go and you play, and you get to be funny, and people love it, and oh my gosh, and I'm just so lucky, you know?
And how on earth do you get over the fear? Because there must be a lot of fear associated with it.
I'm heavily medicated, and in fact, my therapist, I'll be on that couch in a minute. Yeah, no, I have this panic. I feel the most comfortable on stage because I know what to do. I call it the ham bone factor. It's like when I'm in front of 300 people, I know what to do. But the 3 days before, oh my gosh, I'm pathetic. Like, you know, I'm pathetic because it's just hard before. But once I get up there, it's fine.
So you go into a groove.
I go into a groove, and then I get, as the day gets on, like I'm performing on Saturday, my one-woman show. Of course, I think everybody in Toronto is so interested. Meanwhile, they've got their lives. But I'm like, I'm doing a show. You know, and everybody's like, yeah, okay. But it gets more focused, and I have built-in success things I do in the show that I know that if I panic, I've got whole routines now worked out if I forget something. Because, you know, I'm 54, I got no hormones left.
Now, where will people see the show then?
Well, it's going to be at Second City. It's at 4 o'clock because, you know, I figure we're older now. People want to be in their pajamas by 6, then go for dinner, be at home by 7:30, complaining about their life. And 4 o'clock till 5:30, and I got a great jazz player. And he's going to be in there, too, playing jazz, because I play all these characters. Desperate Irish characters who are dating, not me. And, yeah, so it's going to be really fun. A lot of story, a lot of music, and stand-up, and then I do characters.
So where can people find out more information about the show?
Well, you can go to my webpage at kimmet.ca. There's tickets there for sale.
Okay,
or you can just show up at the door, because it's a pretty big space.
Okay, well, that's fantastic, and I'm going to be there.
Oh, are you? Good.
Yeah, I would love to be there.
Did I give you tickets?
No, but I would love. I would love some tickets.
Shoot, darn it. No, yeah, I'll put your name down, right next to my mother. Okay.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Now, where do you go from here? I mean,
Kingston to the Pen. I'm just out on a day pass. No, I live on an island near Kingston because I can't stand civilization, and I actually am doing my show in Kingston, and then I've got a few corporate gigs that I'm doing in the next. October's always busy for my corporate work.
Well, that sounds really great. Now, do you have? I know we were talking about earlier about you've got to have some tips or advice for people to find their funny.
Well, you know,
you found your funny. How can our viewers find their funny? How can they add humor?
Well, you need
into
a
their
really
lives?
bad childhood. No, the thing is. I think it's the kind of thing that it's changing. Comedy is about changing your perspective and finding the surprise in things. You know, people so many times do have such a great sense of humor. When I go into businesses, they'll be so serious, and by the end, they're just laughing and telling me jokes about what they go through. And I think it's perspective. And the other thing that I always do when I'm in a really horrible situation is just go, who can I tell this to? Because it's going to be funny later. It's not funny now as I'm weeping. And then the other one is, like, I'll be a really interesting person in the nursing home. You know what I mean? Like, people will be visiting Auntie Deb for those stories. So, you know, it's like getting that perspective that in 6 months from now, this is not really going to matter that much. You know?
So to get perspective is one really key.
Humor is about perspective. And
what if we don't have humor in our lives?
well, you know,
there's
they
a lot
need
of
to
people
come
who
to the show, I guess. No, I seriously, people are like, a serious look at how to be funny. Next, with Shannon Skinner. I have no idea. Get a grip. Yeah. Medication. No, I don't know. Stay in the moment, because really, I think a lot of people freak out too because they think it's going to be like this forever, whatever that is. You know, if they're afraid or they're scared or they're sick, and I mean, I find in the bleakest moments, that's where it's the funniest, where you're just going, oh my God, this is so horrible that you have to laugh, right? So.
What about reading the funnies? I mean, do you start your
No, I
morning
think
off
those,
by
I don't get those cartoons. Do you get that? Do you ever get them? I'm like,
sometimes
Hager, who's he talking?
Sometimes they make me laugh.
I do you good. Well, then, you know, because I'm like,
maybe I should read them more.
I don't even get how they do it. But no, I think comedy, I mean, actually, some people like the funnies. I think people like, you know, Jon Stewart, they like watching humor because it gives them that, oh my gosh, I was going to say that. At Second City, we learned, like, you should say yes where the audience would say no. And so that's what comedy is. It says yes where everybody goes, oh my gosh, we shouldn't say that.
Well, you know, speaking of stories, this is how you start the foreword of your book. Humans tell stories. It's what we do. It keeps us sane. Cows don't tell stories, and look how mad they went for a while.
Yeah. I live across from the field. I talk to them all the time. Yeah, so I was going to be a vegetarian, but then someone lights up the barbecue and you're eating a burger in front of a cow, and you think, yeah, no wonder you're mad. You know, just, yeah. So anyway, they're killer cows, really. They look peaceful, but they're not.
Well, Deborah, it's been a pleasure having you here. We've now unfortunately run out of time. I've really enjoyed this conversation with you. So for more information about you, your book, your show, people can find you at Kimmet.ca.
Kimmet, yes, Kimmett.
Okay, got it, great. Well, thank you. Good luck with the
Thanks,
show.
Shannon.
Good luck with the book.
Thank
and
you.
I look forward to catching up with you in the next little while.
Thanks a lot.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be speaking about art anywhere. So stay tuned. And of course, for more information about upcoming shows or to contact me, you can visit the website at extraordinarywomentv.com. So stay right there.